Welcome into The First Watch. This is a series where we watch and review classic movies for the very first time. If you like this video and want to see more like it, you can hit that subscribe button, you can hit that like button, hit that little bell, that way you're notified every time that we make a video. And to find all of our content, you can go to CastellaniContent.com. The other week, auteur filmmaker David Lynch passed away at the age of 78. And I think it's very fair to say that David Lynch was one of those directors that truly was larger than life. He became an icon as a person and not just as a director. I was obviously very familiar with David Lynch as an actor, as a creator, but I'll be honest with you, I hadn't seen many of his movies. And I'm aware that I think that his most well-received, critically acclaimed film, I think, is Mulholland Drive. But I wanted to go way, way back, all the way back to some of his earlier work and watch and review Eraserhead. And I said to myself, you know what, this is nice. It'll be a nice, touching tribute to a guy who etched his name into cinema. And we can come away from it and say, man, David Lynch, he was really one of a kind. And then 5 minutes into this movie, I'm like, what if I hate it? Look, there are things about this movie that are not awful. And where it starts to me is David Lynch. And there's certain directors out there, man, who make movies that are not necessarily for me, and they might not even be movies that I enjoy, but it's very clear when you're watching a David Lynch movie that you're watching a David Lynch movie, and he deserves a ton of credit for that, and I think this was one of his earlier works, so I am interested in seeing how he evolved as a filmmaker, because you really get the impression this thing was made for $1.20, and that's not even a criticism of the movie. You can tell that it's very low budget. This guy was very much a visionary, and I think there's a reason why he kind of introduced an entire generation to a whole new world of weirdness. Some imagery in here is legitimately disturbing, the baby especially. It's one of those things that could only work in the era in which this was made, because there's obviously no CG, they are practical effects, and they really do make your skin crawl. I mean, this thing, for something that's so tiny, it is a legitimate movie monster. I mean, it's pretty freaky, and it just feels the way it's created feels very slimy and dirty and gross, and it just, kind of gives you the heebie-jeebies. And I think so much of that was a David Lynch creation. I think that the look of this movie with the black and white aesthetic, I actually mean this as a compliment, the film looks much older than it actually is, and I think that was their intention, to make something that was really grimy and kind of gritty, a very lived-in, almost claustrophobic at points, very cold universe. Again, I think that David Lynch is largely responsible for that. Okay, I think that's enough. Look, I will acknowledge this movie is not made for me at all. I knew very little about it coming in, and so I'll be honest, I don't like abstract shit with no story, and I think that it's very clear. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out. This is a movie that wants to be broken down and analyzed and seen over multiple viewings, and this has always been a big hang-up that I've had about certain films, is there's only a finite amount of time that we have on this earth, and if you want to make a movie that is deserving of multiple rewatches, you have to make it entertaining upon first viewing. The example that I always use is Fight Club, because Fight Club is a film that gained a cult following because over time people went back to it and revisited it and rewatched it, and they realized, wow, there's so much more to this than I originally thought. But Fight Club, even if you don't understand all the nuances to it, is a very entertaining movie the first time you watch it. The characters are entertaining, the back and forth chemistry between the main actors is very good. It's steeped in David Fincher's, very beautiful style. It is an entertaining movie, and so you say, I was entertained by it. Didn't totally understand it, but I'm gonna go back and rewatch it because I did enjoy watching it. This is one of the worst things I've ever seen, and I look, R.I.P. David Lynch, obviously, and I didn't plan for this to be the thing, but it's a movie that's not made for me. But even with that caveat, this is just it does not connect with me whatsoever, and I think that in many ways goes against everything that I look for in a movie. If you go back and watch my top 10 favorite films video, I think there is relative consistency in terms of what I enjoy out of movies. I do think that films need to abide by a certain structure. Now, you can take risks and you can take creative liberties, but when you are watching a film, you are watching people's lives unfold, and with people or whatever, animals, CG creations, what have you. And if you are not invested in those people's lives, you're not going to be invested in the film. In this movie, while I'm sure there are nuances everywhere and there's symbolism everywhere, ultimately, it could have been the most tightly put together, brilliant piece of cinema, and I still didn't give a shit what was going on. I didn't connect with these characters. I didn't connect with the weirdness. It's another one of those movies that's very clear. Like, I'm sure there's a certain group of Hot Topic kids who find this really appealing and it connects with them. To me, by the time we're 10 minutes in and we got 2 scenes of people going at the dinner table, and I'm just saying to myself, this is just the most artsy fartsy, just pretentious thing. It's just not made for me. And I know that there's people that love it, and in many ways it is viewed as a classic. And I'm sure to a certain extent, because I am familiar with his filmography, that David Lynch's movies got progressively less weird over time. Like, I know he did some more mainstream stuff like A Straight Story, and I brought up Mulholland Drive as well. But this, yeah, I cannot imagine ever watching this again or considering watching this again because I could barely get through it the first time. It's like trying to eat air to me. Like, there's nothing for me to latch onto. There's no characters for me to connect with. It's just a bunch of weird images and boring scenes, one after another, and then the movie just ends. Is it artfully done? Yes. And if you are the kind of person who doesn't need a story or characters or good dialogue or character arcs, you just want to see abstract images and a bunch of weird scenes and people wearing weird makeup and guys with weird disheveled independent film hair, you will probably get some sort of enjoyment out of this movie. And I'm sure, especially since David Lynch has recently passed, I will get a lot of criticism from people saying, you just don't understand him and you don't understand his movies. Okay, I'm not going to speak for every movie he's made. I think I got the general gist of what this was trying to be. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. I mean, it's one giant, allegory for fatherhood. But even beyond that, let's say I didn't understand it at all, it still bored me to death. And I found it wildly uneven and dull and pretentious, and I give it a 1 out of 10. Yeah, legitimately, if you love it, great. I'm sure this is somebody's favorite movie, and have at it, enjoy it. I'm sure there's stuff that I like that people look at and say, golly, you enjoyed that. But this will probably be the weakest film we review in this series. I mean, I just didn't. This was total garbage. All right. Hit that subscribe button. You can find all our content on CastellaniContent.com. We'll be back next week. Look, what do you think of Eraserhead? Maybe, please let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm a complete idiot. Maybe I'm a fool. Maybe there's stuff that I'm just missing, but not my vibe. Peace and happiness.